We're going to go full circle. We're going to go back to the large projects that we spoke about earlier this morning, but we're going to talk about it from a different perspective. Excuse me. We're going to talk about it from the perspective of the people who are going to benefit from those projects. So, it'd be interesting to learn their perspective on what Mr. Phillips was talking about with relation to those decision points that we're approaching. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Thad Bettner. He's the general manager for the Glenn-Clusa Irrigation District. And next to him is Ara Ajdarian. He's a water policy administrator for the San Luis Delta Mendota Water Authority. And then anchoring this panel is a familiar face, Mario Santoya. He is a assistant general manager for the Friant Water Authority.
Gentlemen, welcome. Dad?
All right, here, I'll do this one. Is that all right? Can you hear me? Thanks for the invitation to come before you. My name is Thad Bettner. I'm the general manager at Glenn-Clusa Irrigation District. Also an active participant in a joint powers authority that we formed for the NODOS project up in Northern California. First, let me tell you, I'm an engineer, so when I talk about storage, I can build anything and like to build stuff. But I think what at least the position I'm in has showed me is, I also have to be a part-time biologist, a part-time attorney, part-time economist. There's just a lot of decisions riding on just our district activities that we do, much less talking about storage. So, I think that sort of background gives our folks a unique perspective to look at storage, which will probably be a little bit different than what you heard from the Bureau and DWR earlier on the panels, and potentially probably more realistic look at how we're looking at storage going forward. Where do I click this?
You've got an engineer seated to your left.
The other button? Oh, all right, I'll go forward. Right. There we go. Oh, so first slide here just kind of shows you the members of our Joint Powers Authority. We have 5 water agencies that are part of that and 2 counties. And just want to emphasize the counties as a result of once you put a project in a county or in a backyard of a county, they have some significant interest about how the project moves forward. So we thought as we move forward with our JPA, it was important to include counties and their authorities on our Joint Powers Authority. The other districts are agencies that participated in the NODOS investigation going back into the 90s and early 2000s. Just quickly, we did form our Joint Powers Authority in 2010. It was formed in August. And a couple related activities to that. One, the first bullet there, we did have a formation under the Water Code Section 79749A, which allows for the JPA to design, acquire, manage, operate sites, reservoir, and other facilities. And it goes on to talk about what the public benefits of the project would end up being. And then most recently on the federal side, we had Congressman Garamendi and LaMalfa come together from both parties and put together H.R. 4300, which is federal legislation that's currently sitting in the House. And what's unique about 4300 is that it does 2 things. One, it gives the Bureau the opportunity to complete its studies or make a determination whether it has any federal interest in this project or not. And if it doesn't, then essentially authorizes the Joint Powers Authority to move forward with the project. So we gave the federal government a chance to, if you want it, build it. If you don't, we'll take it. And not just authorize it, you spend all the money. It's gave them a decision to make, and like Jason said earlier, we're hoping that decision comes sooner than later. Just real quickly, this is just an outline or overview of the project. You can see sites is in about middle of the Sacramento Valley. Ajay talked a little bit earlier about the benefits. One of the things that sites does, based on its location, it allows all the reservoirs shown here, Folsom, Oroville, Shasta, Trinity, to operate more efficiently. So water is released at the right time, the right temperatures, for the right species, for the right water supply. So you're optimizing the system to maximize the benefits that all the reservoirs can provide jointly versus operating now where you kind of see the Central Valley Project, State Water Project operate as 2 separate projects. Sites will allow much more integration of the projects and, again, improve the efficiency of the whole entire system operation. Ajay also talked about this map. Kind of here's the current layout of the facility, and that's just kind of quick background. I think really where I want to focus is to address kind of our view of the project, what we're thinking about, and I think it fits in very well with some of the questions that were asked at the earlier panels. Is when we started working on this, we recognized that the Bureau had its process that it has to go through. It has, Congress has told them complete feasibility studies, for example, and what has to be in there. And then DWR has looked at the project. They spent the last 40 years looking at it. And there's also this contention between you have DWR and you have a state water project. Well, who really wants to build it? And so we said there's a unique role for the JPA, so we put together an action plan. This is kind of the summary of it. And it was to identify the yields and benefits of the project. And we looked with new Delta conveyance and without it. And one of the unique things there was that, for example, the Bureau looks at conveyance as not being reasonable or foreseeable under NEPA, so it won't study conveyance. And we said, well, that's a significant limitation because if our environment's changing, facilities are changing, you want to make sure new storage performs in any future scenario. So we did that. We performed a cost evaluation. So we updated the cost of it, partnered with Reclamation to redo the costs. And then kind of the third bullet would be we looked at addressing the affordability and the funding options. How do you pay for this project? And where the agencies have kind of said, well, let's do all the environmental documentation, let's do the feasibility studies, and kind of go the field of dreams approach of, well, if we build it, they will come. It's like, no, you have to tell them why they should come first and what they're going to get and what's going to cost them. So that was vital. So we've been working on that. We finished that up, and I kind of want to quickly touch on what we found based on that. The two issues that we continue to work on are public outreach, both locally and regionally, as well as doing meetings like this, and then identifying what beneficiaries would be interested in the project. So the alternative C is what Ajay talked about earlier. That was a 1.8 million acre foot reservoir, 500,000 acre feet of average annual yield, adding 1 million acre feet of increased upstream storage, again through system integration improvements, water supply, ecosystem benefits, renewable power, recreation. I could go on. I put a little Christmas tree up there because what we've done is we've said, it's a big tree, let's keep hanging more and more ornaments on it. And eventually, the tree's not going to stand up. And I think that's kind of where we've gotten with sites, that we're asking it to do so much. We've loaded up with so much that unfortunately it's just not a project that's going to move forward in its current configuration. And I think we have to be honest. I mean, I think we can't be hopeful. We have to be honest. So this is kind of indicative. Jason sent this out earlier in his handout and just wanted to focus on one thing. If you look at the area in box, that's north of Delta or Sites Reservoir. And if you look down almost to the second last bullet, it says feasibility is low. Well, if a feasibility is low, why don't you just stop studying the thing? Right? I mean, so we agree. If the feasibility is low, then we should be looking at something else. Alternative C, the tree's too big and it's low. Let's look at something else. Yes, Mr. Eisenberg.
No, I know.
Oh.
I know the form you're looking at. What do you want as an alternative, though? That interests me.
Okay, so
because you're the first group
you're taking
that's
the bait.
Actually formed officially.
Right.
And, I'm interested.
So I put good bait on the hook. How's that? So what we did was kind of put this deal of you got to look at yield benefits, you got to look at the cost, and you have to look at affordability. And kind of you just keep running this, right? Of, okay, well, we looked at the project, we looked at all the benefits, looked at the cost. Well, is it affordable? Can somebody pay for it? No. So, okay, well, let's change the yield. Let's change the benefits. Let's change the costs. Is it affordable? No. And we kind of just go through this iteration, right, to say, what's that process where you get to affordable? So we have defined an alternative D that we're currently looking at. And this involves a smaller reservoir. So it goes from a 1.8 million acre foot down to 1.3 million acre feet. It answers the question about how often can you fill it, how much are you actually using that yield, or how much are you changing yield by a different reservoir. If we can't fill the 1.8 every year, let's just build it smaller, right? Save the cost there. So we did that. So we reduced the yield of it. We put in fewer facilities. We lowered the cost risks of different facilities. The other big thing is we really looked at 2 anchor tenants. Instead of saying let's make this 10 different multiple benefits, let's focus on a couple, make it work for those 2. Kind of our anchor tenants, in our shopping center, and we can add others later. Make it affordable, containable. We want to make it implementable, buildable, have the operations simplified, and then allow it to be expanded. And so one of the things we've looked at, for example, is renewable hydropower. Well, that's great. We could probably make this project to where it's renewable hydropower, but if somebody wants that, why don't you bring that to the table? We can add that onto the project. You bear all the costs of that. There's no reason we want to put those burden the project with that cost first and then go find somebody to hopefully invest in that. Let's say we'll add it if you're interested, but you have to bring all the costs, you have to bring FERC, you have to deliver all those deliverables. We're not going to saddle the project with that burden. Again, looking at cost containment, schedule containment. And then kind of beneficiaries would be the next step, which we're doing right now once we get kind of this project costed out, do the affordability, feasibility analysis on it, go meet with potential customers, including the environment. And, to me, if you can't answer this first bullet, what am I going to get and what's going to cost me? Forget it. I mean, you go buy a car, that's what you're going to ask, right? What is it? What's in the car? How fast it drive? How much it's going to cost me? And do I want to buy it? Well, what we've set up is not a car lot. We've set up, a big lot with basically a Pinto on it and saying that's all you get. Whether you like it or not, that's what you get. And I think we're trying to say, does it fit into your water portfolio? Does it fit in the environmental portfolio? So we're trying to kind of redesign the project around that. And we looked at some cost allocation alternatives. I'm just going to skip that for the sake of time because I know you're having a long day. And then just kind of focus on some closing thoughts and allow some time for questions. Kind of when we think about this, first of all, we have to really be focused on, what's the project, what's the end goal, not about process. Unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in process and we lose the vision of ultimately what are we trying to build and what are we trying to provide benefits for. And I think that focus is important. Financing, not feasibility. So you've heard a lot about, is it feasible? Well, anything's feasible. But the question is, can you make the financing work to where the project will pay for itself? And that has to be one of the project fundamentals that you always have to incorporate in it. So we've been focusing on a finance plan. How do you build it? And making sure the finance plan equals the project getting built versus having a project that's overbuilt and you can't make the finances work out. So that's imperative. Third, delays are deadly. One of the things that we've been looking at on these when you get to the project these sizes, one thing we learned, for example, is about a 4 to a 6 month delay equals 1% in interest for financing. So it's important to deliver these projects on schedule and at cost. And then last thing, free money costs. One of the things that, for example, when the Bureau's been looking at these projects, looking at taking some of the public benefits and saying, well, Congress is going to pay for those. That's basically free money, non-reimbursable. Well, the time it would take to get Congress to make that decision, we're probably 6 to 10 years out. And while you're chasing that money, project costs are escalating, permitting, everything escalates over that period. So the question is it really worth the wait to try and get that money and say, nope, we're going to finance it locally or with partners, et cetera, and say there's just some things we may just not want to get, like federal money, and we'll try to do all the financing without federal money in the project. So those are the things that we're currently looking at. So I'll end there and take questions later.
Great.
Okay. So, thanks. On your cost allocation pie chart, maybe it'd be hypothetical, but could you run through what entity would pay for those elements?
Sure. So, one of the thoughts, and this is probably about 6 to 7 months old, is actually part of when we talked to the Water Commission, was if we set up the reservoir to provide public benefits, like ecosystem benefits, recreation, et cetera, that could potentially be paid for out of the water bond if it moves forward. So this would be one way to allocate.
So ecosystem enhancement, recreation, maybe even flood damage,
right.
You would see as potentially the state of California contributing through,
right.
perhaps through a bond.
Right.
So on, is that hydropower? You mentioned that if somebody had a proposal that might make money. What about water supply? That's most of
that's going to be all private money that's brought to the table.
So who would buy the water?
Well, that's kind of until we can kind of get out and tell them folks are interested in the water. Like we know there's agencies in our region who are looking to buy water, so we would want to come to them with a finance plan and say,
do your joint power authority district partners need water now?
some of them do, yes.
And what do they expect or want to pay for that?
Well, I could tell you that in the configuration that's currently, until we went to alternative C, there's nobody who wants to pay for it because that water is $500 to $700 an acre foot.
And alternative A, which you're talking about,
Alternative D,
or D rather?
we're shooting for about $300 to $400 an acre foot.
Will some of your local districts
Yes.
buy water?
Yeah,
At that?
yeah.
Okay. And is that the point of the project to assure a larger, reliable water supply locally?
Well, I think in our region, water supply is important, but we also have the environment is huge in our region. So, we have issues like this year we came across with operations for protection of winter runs fish, in-stream flows. We see this project as also being significant improvement in our system to be able to provide additional benefits for that, for cold water pool, for salmon. So there are some environmental benefits that could originate out of this project, and that's another dialogue. So it's not just sitting down with...
But I guess I'm asking, what's the business reason for your constituency, which are the local property owners, communities, water districts, to want to pursue such a large endeavor here?
I would say there's three reasons. One is this project won't get built unless we're actively engaged in it and potentially taking the project on versus the other state or federal partners. Two, we can have the conversation of, is this project going to move forward or not? I mean, we're all busy. If this project doesn't pencil out, put it back on the shelf. Let's move on. I mean, we're not here to say...
Does it only pencil out if there are guarantees that exporters from the Delta will buy a large amount of water?
Does it only pan out?
Pencil out.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Does
if we...
it only work financially if you are able to store water and sell it outside of Sacramento Valley?
There's probably some likelihood that some part of the water be purchased from buyers out of Sacramento Valley. But we've talked to buyers in our Sacramento Valley, Sac Urban folks. So, I mean, we've been reaching out, but again, kind of until you get to the point of what am I going to get, what's it going to cost me, and what am I going to get for it? I think that's where we're trying to get with those project fundamentals. And once we have those answers, then it'll say, are there investors? If there's not, then again, the project doesn't move forward.
Would the environmental benefits from this project, which I assume would be at least in substantial part assistance to the refuge system within the service area of the district, would the environmental benefits be in addition to all current legally required environmental obligations?
Yes.
Okay, so they're not a substitute.
No.
And in what way would we quantify both the existing obligation and plus whatever else is involved?
Well, we would set up an operational plan where we'd say, here's how much yield out of the project would be dedicated for those different benefits. So part of and this is kind of where you get into this catch-22, there has to be a conversation of what are those public benefits that folks are looking for.
This is primarily of benefit to the in-district users in dry years, I would assume.
The in-district users?
The in-district, your water district users, primarily of benefit in dry years.
Well, if this were operated, if you had well, it depends how you want to operate it. You could operate as a dry year protection facility if you had conveyance in with the current some of the high outflow requirements being put in with conveyance. I mean, you could operate this project as almost a regulating reservoir everywhere where you're filling it and you're using that water for flows, for outflow, for in-stream flow. So there has to be that conversation with, and the way it's set up through the bond would be through Cal Fish and Wildlife and the State Board and Water Commission to say, what are those benefits you're looking for, and making sure we're operating for that. I mean, that's kind of the same thing. You're going to a water supply, water user community saying, you want to buy water, here's when you'd get it, here's how much it would cost you. There needs to be that same dialogue with, the environmental community or fishery agencies and say, how do you want this project operated? Put that operations together and see how it works. What we have now is let's do all the work on the project, and then we'll figure out afterwards. And we just have to figure out at the front end.
Am I correct that some of your residents that have existing legal claims to water rights or pre-1914 entitlement would benefit from the storage through those vehicles, through that legal status as well?
No.
None at all?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I would say is that you build the project, you set up operational agreements. If you say it's these folks have invested to purchase water out of it, it's their water. If you have the environmental, for environmental benefits, we'd make sure that the environmental benefits were served by the project. I mean, that's...
At the present time, compare, if you would, the total volume of water that's currently being used by all of your users from whatever source is involved on an annual basis just to pick a regular year, not a wet year, regular year, and compare that volume to the volume they're using this year, now, or will, just roughly. I understand it's ballpark.
You mean the whole settlement contractor group? I know what you're
saying. Within the boundaries of your...
Oh, just our district?
Yeah.
Oh, our district? Normally we use about 700,000 acre feet. I think this year we're going to be down closer to somewhere under 6.
But you've got also some underground. Does that include underground
No,
water?
we're not accessing really much groundwater this year at all.
So you're not accessing it because you're dropped down 17%.
That, and we just don't have a significant groundwater infrastructure in our district.
I'm trying to figure out whether this is primarily to protect the in-district property owners first, and to the limit of their benefit, which is 700,000 acre feet in a regular time. But of course, if you go market the water elsewhere, all or some of it, under terms and conditions, you'll be using a larger volume, I would assume. What would you be marketing out of a storage facility in a drought year like this?
Well, it'd be based on the people who invested in the project to make that determination of how and when they would want water. So if we had some neighboring districts that wanted water every year, they'd take it every year. If you had folks in Sacramento County, they had problems with Folsom operations this year, they may want water once every 5 years. Those are the types of arrangements that we're going to have to work on and figure out what the contracting for water supply out of the project ultimately is. But I mean, I think the other thing that's important is one of the reasons that we set up a joint powers authority is that it's a broad range of agencies and counties. So it's ultimately, while we're one agency of the JPA, by no means are we controlling, the project or anything like that. So, I think it's important to clarify that. So I'm not sure ultimately where your questions are. So when I hear people say that Bettner guy's got a hell of an idea, you want me to say, oh yeah, he's involved, but he's not really. Well, I mean, I could tell you that based on the things that our agency and our neighboring agencies did this year in operations of the project, I mean, I think we're looking at the system as a whole, not just what's in our own best interest.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Thad. It's good news that you're finding a way to adapt all the work that Jason has done to try and make it workable and for you.